Welcome back, everybody, to Search My Heart podcast, where we have honest conversations from an honest place. We really loved recording this episode, and we hope that you enjoy listening to it as well. You know, after being together for a while, you start to forget about some experiences that you had. So it's interesting going back to some of those early experiences. But yeah, so in this episode, you're going to hear some of the interpersonal challenges that we've experienced as part of Church Hurt.
Yeah.
And how we navigated that. So you hear from some stories from myself and some stories from Prince. And we also have a really nice Reddit story for you as well. We hope you enjoy this listen. Take care.
Yes. Enjoy the tea. We can just switch gears a bit and talk about the relational aspect of it, just in terms of relationships, because these ones, the system sometimes, like you said, it's systemic, sometimes it's just doctrine, ethnicity.
We're going to broken people doing broken things.
Well, yeah, let's, because I think when people hear church hurt, there's different ways they categorize it. So can you speak into...
Where do you want me to start from?
Just one or two. I mean, like I said,
church hurt is hard. Okay, so Prince, I think you remember when we first started dating.
Yeah.
Oh, this one was very hard for me. I remember. So when Prince and I first started dating, at the time there was somebody that you were interested in, and you had like reached out to. What
at the time?
Yeah, no. You had reached out to a year before. There was somebody that you had like tried to pursue a relationship with, but they weren't interested.
Yeah.
So fast forward to a year later, I meet Prince. We're talking probably even more than a year later.
It's more than a year, yeah.
Like at this point, like that's no longer a thing. The lady's like not interested. She's moved on, thinking of other people. And I was actually friends with this person. And from the conversations that we would have, I could tell that they were interested in Prince, right?
Mm-hmm.
So at a point, I start to catch feelings for Prince because like it's not like they dated. You've clearly said you're not interested. We're all moving on, right? Yeah. And then Prince, and I've only been at the church, 8 months at this point? No, I don't think it's up to a year. Because I joined the church in May and Prince asked me out in February.
The next
year. And so and Prince reaches out to me. And so like I go to this friend of mine. I'm like, okay, by the way, Prince is asking me out. I think I'm gonna go forward with it. And like I wanted to have a conversation.
Yeah.
And so we have that conversation. She's like, yeah, go for it. I'm so happy for you guys.
I will place on record that I didn't think the conversation was necessary, but
I just thought like that's what you do with your girlfriend.
Yeah,
and honestly, I'm extra that way. Even my other friends, I took them out to dinner to be like some of my other friends, I took them out to be like, oh, this is a life update for me. I'm
fair enough.
Now, right? So, but I think Prince, we went out on the Thursday, and then literally the next day, I had a conversation with her, and she was like, "Good luck to you, all the best," type of thing. I'm happy for you. So I thought that was it. And then what happened? Like the week after, I went to the UK to visit my sister, and this friend of mine. I left on a Saturday night, right? So this friend of mine calls me and is like, oh, are you on the plane? I'm like, I'm always almost on the plane. She's like, safe travels. Gotta beg. And then the next day, I think the Monday, Prince calls me and is like, Dami, something happened. I need to talk to you about it, but I don't want to ruin your trip. I'll talk to you about it when you get back. But at this point, Prince is hinting that this friend, let's call the friend Julia had reached out to him about like, I don't know, like just something. So I'm like, what's happening? So Prince has already hinted. And then Julia's messaging me on Thursday. How's your trip going? I'm like, something is wrong somewhere because my boyfriend just told me that you're here, like, you know, like shooting your shot and you're asking me how my trip is going. You're messaging me before I get on the flight. So I don't respond to that message. And then I come back from the UK and Prince sits me down and it's like this person was praying and they felt like God was calling them to reach out to Prince and to pursue something or something like that. Hey, how do you fight with what God has said, please? And then I was like, it took me several months to pray. Or I think you remember, like it took me a while to discern if Prince was like the person I should date and all of that. So I've done my own process. I've talked to my pastor. I've talked to my so I've talked to my pastor, I talked to my friends, I prayed about it, lots of discerning. And I really felt like this was a relationship God was calling me to pursue. And here's another, solid Christian woman, who I've known for the same amount of time at this point, and we've actually been in a good friendship.
Mm.
And they're also saying that, this is something that God is calling them to. So who is wrong? Is it me or is it the other person? And when you're young, you don't understand that, like, church people sometimes use God to like say things that they want to do, instead of being like, oh, Prince, I like you. And I maybe regret the decision when I said no a year ago. And I would like to pursue a relationship with you now. It's more of a spiritual thing now where it's, the Holy Spirit had asked me to do this, or God was calling me to do this. It kind of shuts down conversation.
Mm.
So that part was already very stressful for me. It was a brand new relationship. And I would say the first few months of our relationship were very tough for that reason, because I had my own insecurities and I was like, okay, did I hear from God? Did I not hear from God? And it was very tough. And it was also hard because this person wasn't coming to me to have a conversation. While all of this was happening, they were like checking in with me about how the relationship is going. How can you be checking in with me about how the relationship is going when you've already like gone to talk to my boyfriend behind my back to tell him that you're now interested in pursuing a relationship? You know what I mean? And so I was like, and at this point, I'm still new to the church, right? Whereas this person has been at the church for years, and many of the friends that we shared, they'd been friends with that with those friends longer, right? And so all of this is happening. I'm confused. Prince is pretty sure that, he wants to continue pursuing a relationship with me. He just shares it with me so that like, I know that it's happening. Right. So eventually I confront this person. I'm like, oh, didn't this happen? And she's like, oh, he told you about it? What? I was just like, what is happening here? Like, what kind of Nollywood drama is this where you tell my boyfriend that you're interested in him while he's with me, but you're also checking with me about how the relationship is going, but you're hoping that my boyfriend doesn't tell me that you've reached out to him? You know what I mean? And this is all happening in church. And, I don't know what happened, but I tried to be like anti-gossip. I don't always succeed, but I just felt like to protect this person's image or whatever, I wasn't going to tell anyone that it happened. So I think I didn't, do you remember? I don't think I told anybody about it for the first year, or anyone who was attending the church, really, because I didn't think it was a good look, right, for this person. But then here I was thinking I was being the bigger person, and then I start to talk to my other friends, and they're talking about how I broke girl code, and I went and pursued somebody that my friend had clearly told me they were interested in. I got a bed. Like, how was I? This was 21, brand new to a church, brand new to a relationship, my first serious relationship, and I'm dealing with, all of this. And so it was very hard because at the end of the day, when I finally confronted this person and had a relationship, it was a conversation about it. It was almost like, oh, but, I told you that I like this person and I was going to ask them out, and then you went behind my back and did. I was like, what? I do not remember ever having this conversation with you in my life, and the way it was turned, it just, I don't know, like suddenly I was the villain in this story. And it really hurt my feelings because if Prince had decided to pursue this relationship, it would have been so hard for me. I don't know if I would have been able to continue to go to the church. You know what I mean? He would have broken up with me to go date somebody else in the church after like what, a month? It wasn't even it was 3 weeks into our relationship at this point, right? And so that was a very tough situation for me because I don't know, I thought that it was wise to not talk to anybody about it. In hindsight, I wish that I sought help more and I got wisdom from other people. It was just very heartbreaking. I think in this situation, somebody was clearly in the wrong. And so for it to be turned around, like on my head, and like for it to look like I was the issue or as the one who caused the problem,
Yeah.
that was extremely hurtful. And then we still had to go to the same church for a while. Thankfully, COVID hit and then we didn't have to see each other. But yeah, I would say that's one of like the vivid stories of like interpersonal church hurt for me. And apparently these things happen in church all the time. So like the people I would summon the courage to talk to about it, like, this happens all the time. It's part of life. It happened with this person. Don't you remember? And it happened with this other person. And even my therapist at the time was like, oh, it happens all the time. Don't let it stop you from having a friendship with this person. And
with the person who did it.
Yeah. I mean, I changed therapists since then.
Oh wow!
I've changed therapists since then because I remember Prince had asked this person a question that I thought was very powerful. Prince was like, "I know that you have a friendship with Dami, and if she finds out about this, it's going to ruin that friendship." And the response was, well, I've known you, Prince, longer than I've known Dami. So if I lose that friendship, it is what it is. And to me, I think that was the crux of it. It wasn't just about what I thought was wrong. It was also, this is actually how you regard this friendship. It's not important to you enough for you to like, you know, rein your feelings in and do what's honorable. You know what I mean? And you can do whatever you want to do at my expense. And so like, I think the other hurtful part, like the experience I had was hard, but I think apparently because this happens in church all the time, the few people that I could confide in, either because they had known this person longer, just didn't support me in that experience, or the people who were more neutral, just like would say things like, oh, just forgive. These things happen all the time, or like all of that. But for me, it was deeply hurtful. I can't, there's not many other experiences I've had in my life that have hurt me that deeply because it just felt wrong in many ways, right? So the interpersonal thing was hurtful, but also how the few people I could confide in treated it was also very hurtful for me.
I think that because I was going to ask you, and I mean, you touched on it. I think what's really sad is because I was going to ask you how the interpersonal and the relationships with the people that you both
like
knew.
I think just because it was awkward, no one wanted to talk about it because they knew that it would mean either I would leave the church or she would leave the church. So like I didn't see anyone really call her to order or reprimand her for that behavior. And it was very hard for me because when you had asked this person out, right, it wasn't a secret thing. Many people had gone to talk to this person. Like, Prince is actually a very nice person. Are you sure your answer is no? I think there's at least 5 people who did that, right? And so, like, these people know that there was nothing there, you know what I mean? Like, and so this person was way out of line because they were very vocal about the fact that they were interested in a relationship with you, right? So I hope that's not hurtful. You're amazing.
No, no it's not.
And so, like, it was very obvious that this person was out of order, but out of fear of, you know, losing a long-term veteran or a long-term friend, all of that, no one called this person to order. To the best of my knowledge, maybe one person, I don't know. And I was just told to like let it go and move on. Yeah. And I thought that was just really terrible.
I think the logic behind it was because I think it's really hard to have experienced that. And I think for me, just even being on the other side of it and seeing it all play out, it's a very difficult thing to be able to be in the midst of. Like, if it's happening to you, it's difficult. If it's happening to someone you know, it's also difficult. But if you're seeing it from a distance, maybe you bring out your popcorn and you're like, wow, look at this drama taking place in the church, of all places. But I mean, it's not necessarily unique to just the church. It happens even outside of the church. But absolutely, I think in the context of the church, I think that it's one of those things where it's like you learn a lot about yourself and about what really people hold dear and
Yeah.
what people's values are in times like this. Because I think this is the part where, as a Christian and as someone who goes to church and loves God, when it comes to how we treat people, the basic decency, that part is just something that there should be. It's a non-negotiable. Like, you can make mistakes, you can say certain things that are out of order, but once you've kind of known that, okay, this is the part that I've taken that's wrong, how do you walk it back in a way? So I think that was rough, and what it did to our relationship in the early days.
Oh, it was tough.
Yeah, because I think you came and you told me one person came and said to you the whole, how could you have done something like that?
Yeah, like breaking girl code. It was like, what are you talking about? This is like over a year ago.
David, and I was like, but where did the person get the information from, and who's
Sure, I was thinking I was protecting somebody's image.
funneling
Whereas, like,
information?
yeah, they were here like tarnishing my image.
Yeah,
like,
so-
it's so painful.
It was, but to go to that point, which is kind of, it's like you could have left the church, because if
Yeah.
I pursued a relationship with this person, what are the chances you'd have
No,
stayed with all
yeah.
the things that would have happened, all the talking and everything?
And it was new. I hadn't even had time to build enough roots, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
so- Yeah, no, but that, in the long run, when you think about it, one person would probably have lived it. It's
Yeah,
just, it's,
yeah.
it's because, and this is the thing, how do you handle relationships where two people can actually have an interest in one person? Or there could be this connection where there's a triangle. There's one person who was interested in one person, and then they moved on to the other person in such a civil and respectful and God honest way
yeah.
that it doesn't cause one person to stand up and say, well, I guess this is my cue. Especially if you're the one that's outside of the equation. So if it's not you that ends up being the person in the relationship, how can it be handled in such a way that it doesn't become a thing where just like there are only two options?
Yeah.
Leave the church or leave the church. There's
Yeah.
really nothing else. It doesn't really give you the opportunity to say, well, you can be part of the church. And I think those are things that we don't talk about enough in terms of it. People have walked away from churches, ministry positions, opportunities, because things like this have happened and they don't feel like anybody really backed them.
Yeah, exactly.
Nobody really kind of said,
And that's how I
this
felt.
is tough, and I
Yeah.
actually know this person.
Yeah.
And the truth of it is, it's difficult, and in certain ways I would have preferred if I could maybe just take your side and stand with you. I can't do that, but that doesn't necessarily mean I endorse what has happened. So to be honest, I want to just be able to communicate to you and tell you, well, this is wrong, I don't endorse it, and while I am going to have to work with my person, a friend who I no longer,
Yeah.
I just want you to know that I'm not in any way endorsing what has
Yeah, exactly.
there has to be a way in which we still speak truth to our loved ones and people.
Yeah.
You can be fiercely loyal. So if it means you kind of say, you know what, I'm going to save face, but still speak the truth
Yeah.
in love without having to like tarnish people's names, there should be ways to do it.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm happy I was able to share that story. I'm not angry anymore, but it was painful at the time. But
Yeah.
I know that we have to, go to the next
The next
question.
one? Yeah.
Yes.
So, when do you think like when it comes to church hurt, is there a point where you leave? You feel like it's wise to leave, to stay, or to take a break from church? Is there ever a time where leaving is you would actually say it's best to leave the church, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think it goes back to what we started in the first place. What I like, and something I always say is, before you step into anything, you need to have your why.
Yeah,
Because when the going gets tough, you need to be able to go back to your why.
yeah,
Right? If your church in the first place doesn't have those 5 foundational things, right? There's no pastoral integrity or leadership integrity, or how they teach the word is wonky,
Yeah.
or like they don't really believe in community or fellowship and all of that. I think that's already a systemic issue that's indicative of, suggesting that you should go find something else.
yeah,
Because when those pillars are not strong, there's going to be issues,
Yeah.
right? If people don't understand the Bible and not dealing with conflict or things like that, the biblical way,
yeah,
it's going to be an issue. So I think that's always a good thing to go back to. So if those things already have already broken down, then depending on the stage that you're at in your relationship, depending on the stage that you are in your relationship with God, I would recommend leaving,
yeah.
right? But
Leaving and just like going to another church, is that what?
yeah, leaving and finding a church that then has those 5 things, or like the important things in looking for a church, because that's systemic,
Yeah,
right? And very often it's hard for one person to change that.
yeah,
But I think everything you do should always be subject to prayer.
Yeah.
Because, you can decide that a church is not teaching the Bible well enough, but the church is actually teaching the Bible well enough, right?
Good
So,
perspective.
I think have conversations with the pastor. I don't think you should ever leave a church without having a conversation, though. I think you have some conversations with somebody in leadership about the things that you're seeing and get their perspective so that you can understand like why certain things are that way.
Yeah.
However, if it's a interpersonal dynamic thing, right? I would like to believe that, even if you had gone with this other person or whatever, the reasons I chose the church were still there. Oh, I think one important thing about a church is like being missional, right? Reaching out to the community, giving back to the community, like sharing the love of Jesus and all of that. That's very important. And that was one of the major factors that made me pick that church, right? Those things were still in place. There was nothing that the leadership did that like was contrary to those values that are important.
Yeah.
So maybe I would have taken like a 1 month break or whatever, or I would have had to like beg one of my friends to follow me to church for a month or two until I felt confident going alone again.
Yeah.
But because nothing that happened in that situation was indicative of like a systemic issue in the church, and the values that the church had were still there, I would like to believe that I would have like forced myself to stay.
Yeah.
But I don't think that that's necessarily the case for everybody. Like if I think ultimately, if you have an experience that makes it impossible for you to worship God, for you to receive the word, and for you to fellowship with people, and you're just going through the motions, then you need to pray about it.
Yeah.
And then there needs to be a conversation with somebody godly or like a therapist or somebody like that can help you think through if it's something that you can overcome or if it's more helpful for you to just move on to something else. What stresses me out about breaks though is for some reason a 1 month break usually turns into a 5-year break. I don't know why. That's the danger there. So I don't recommend long breaks. I think it's important to just assess this experience that I've had. Is it something that a few months from now I can move on from and be part of the church community fully again?
Yeah.
Or is this something that is becoming a hindrance? And then I need to leave. But I do think, I'm not trying to gaslight anybody. I do think we need to have thick skin in a sense when it comes to community. Like there needs to be a commitment to the spiritual community that you pick. And that's why you shouldn't do it with levity. Like you need to make sure that you have your real reasons for it. You need to make sure you've prayed about it. You need to have your reason so that when you make that commitment to the church, you're committed. And if you're leaving, it has to be for like very solid, valid reasons type of thing. And it can't be like a 1 week decision. I think it's also important to sit with the decision and continue to faithfully go until you feel like, okay, I've prayed about it, I've thought about it, I've discerned, and it's time for me to leave. Yeah. That's how I would say it. What do you think?
I think you've raised some good points. I think when it comes to the systemic one, that's clear. There should be things that should at least allow for. You should be able to at least know what's troubling you or why you're unsettled or why you're no longer happy where you are, like what's maybe not giving you the peace of mind that you had before. So like if you've been hurt because of something that happened, being able to point that out clearly, because sometimes it's just you can be upset about something. It might be because maybe you are hoping to be able to do something. You suggested something and it wasn't taken on board.
Yeah.
Is that enough to leave a church? I don't think it is. Sometimes it's fleshing out why you're hurt. And if there's actually substance in terms of things that like, okay, this is not just maybe what I wanted to do that maybe was not taken on, which at the end of the day, that can happen. So I think fleshing that out. But I also say one of the things I would advise against is staying in a place where you find yourself more often than not complaining, lamenting, and criticizing. When you find that you can no longer submit to spiritual leadership in the church and you are more often than not criticizing and lamenting certain things, it might be a good time to go.
Yeah.
You should not be in a place where you do more of lamenting and complaining.
Search your heart and not complain as like so that you're not complaining as
well,
much.
yes, there's that aspect, but I think whichever way, you either switch and understand that you don't, because you're not meant to create an atmosphere that's breeds division and all kinds of infighting and different camps. So you must be very intentional to ensure that are the things causing you concern things that are issues that are serious enough for you to consider walking away. But don't be in a place where if you already know that every Sunday or every time you talk to someone, you're more likely to complain. You're right. You can search your heart, as the podcast says. So, is there something here? But other times it's just a difference in beliefs, understandings, and it's okay. It's okay to say, we're not. When you see the story of Paul and Barnabas and how God used both of them to do great work in ministry, but they separated, but they did great work in ministry. So there are times where you recognize we are not aligned here, but rather than complaining, there are people who are aligned there.
Yeah.
So don't bring division to those or try to get them to see something that maybe they won't see.
Yeah, exactly.
Especially when it's not things that's like, there's a crime committed here, or someone is doing something that's an abuse here. No, when it just comes to fundamental approaches to certain things, it's good to see the other aspect of it and say, well, what does it look like to be part of a church where I'm contributing constructively and not? So I think there's times to walk away and just say, you know what? But I also think
walk away and go somewhere else.
You also do that with discernment. You pray through it.
Yeah.
But you also consult with people who are spiritual mentors and disciples who you've worked with and journeyed with. Don't make those decisions just based on what you think I'll just take a break, like you said, because the breaks can stretch longer. And I just think it's good to think through it carefully. And then if you're going to take a break, what does it look like to still be part of what does it look like for your walk with God to not suffer while you're figuring things out?
Because you can take a break from a church, but if there's a small group of people that you already have a small group or a life group where you trust all those
community,
people.
That's where the values grow.
Yeah,
what does it look like? Because the places, it's like learning language, and you kind of say, you meet with a group of people that all for that 1 hour you're with them, they are speaking the language. It helps you. But if you stop connecting with them for months, there's no real use for you to use the language.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think it helps to always say, well, the church owns one thing, but how do I stay connected to a group of people that help me stay
because I know people who like struggle to attend the main service but continue to go to small group.
Yeah.
Right? So I do think it's important to find other ways to like find community.
Stay connected.
I like to always give, warning, because I never want to belittle experiences. I remember a story somebody shared where like she was assaulted by somebody in the church, right? And then reported it to the pastor, and the pastor was like, oh my gosh, this is really terrible, we're going to reprimand this person and have a conversation with them. And then the next Sunday they invite this person up on stage to thank them for their contributions to the church and financial support. This person who had assaulted this lady and was very hurtful. I think in a situation like that, there's no integrity. We're talking about no leadership integrity, because the person who had done it was another person who was in leadership, and the pastor is endorsing this person, right? At that point, I think fundamentally there's a systemic issue, and you gotta go. You gotta go and you gotta do what you gotta do. Like, it might be hard for you to go to church or to trust people for a while in between, but just try to have that one Christian friend or two that you still continue to trust, that you're journeying with until you're ready to face Christian community again. Because an experience like that, I don't even know how to. It must be heartbreaking. You know what I mean? So it's always, everything is on a scale, right? Everything is different. There's no one size fits all approach. And so, like, when I say people should have thick skin, I'm not saying thug it out through like terrible situations like that. It's just more of the things you're saying. If people don't accept your ideas, or there are other things that I think we need to like stomach and go through versus big, like other things like, experiences like that lady had, type of thing.
I think there's a balance to it. I think it's good to find ways to address the ones that are like fundamental issues in
Yeah.
terms of theology, doctrine, ideas in terms of what I would prefer if we had 3 more songs of worship rather than 2.
Yeah.
And then 2 more, an extra song in worship will be great. And the pastor says, no, we like 2. And so, well, I've tried that. But there's another church that has 3 songs. Just go and worship and let the Lord be praised. There's no point really saying, do you know that other churches are doing 3 songs and they keep doing 2 songs in this church?
But if you're
Why-
running through like 4 or 5 churches, like
That's not right.
here,
So there are issues there. But
yeah.
sometimes when people complain about them in the most loving way, it will help if you just try the church that's doing what you want.
Yeah.
It could really help.
But do you know what I always find? When you finally try the one that you really want, it still won't be enough.
Well, then that points to other issues. And then I will just plug in this before I think we're going to switch over to Reddit stories.
Are we still doing the Reddit stories? Okay.
Yeah, but I would add this. There is a place for counseling.
Yes.
It is a good place. It is important. And please, there are certain hurts you don't just wake up the next morning and say, I'm back.
Nah.
Back in church, because through 2 months in, you might probably start seeing things that are triggering you, and then you realize I didn't deal with it.
Exactly.
And the last thing you want is to project what happened before in a place where maybe you're thinking there's something, but it's not the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's good to actually take time. And that, when you talk about breaks, it's good to take time to assess, where is this hurt coming from, and have I dealt with the issues? Because even when people have done drastic and terrible things, it's not just them that you need to worry about, yourself in terms of how you heal through that. It's really important that you take the time and do that, because whether you leave and you go across the world to another church, halfway across the world to a different church, if you've not really dealt with the things that need to be, or if you're not taking a proactive step to do it, it's very possible that the things that will trigger you can come up again. So I think counseling is really important. And I can't emphasize that enough when it comes to dealing with hurts.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And praying, discernment, there's many things, but let's do a Reddit story.
Yes,
I'm very excited for this one. Thank you, Prince, for finding them. Okay, navigating a breakup church. I feel like we did this one similar, but let's do you still want to do it?
It depends on you. You can.
Okay. I'm thinking about it. Okay, let's do it still. I ended a relationship with a guy I met through my church. He was a sweetie. We seemed to have a lot in common, and we had some really magical dates. Aww. I tried really hard to be open and honest with him. We dated for 5 months, and I ended the relationship 2 months ago. When the honeymoon phase wore off, I found out that he believed that biblical submission of the wife to the husband meant that she needed to agree with him all the time and accept all of his beliefs as her own, just like churchgoers should accept what their elders teach without question. We had some conversations that were hours long about things I had said over the months we had dated that were wrong. He turned some of my vulnerabilities and struggles that I had been open about against me. And he told me how I was wrong for disagreeing with him. Said that if I respected him, I would never disagree, and how I should accept his position about things or stop stating my own. The relationship was heading into a really unhealthy place, so even though I had felt close with him, I broke up with him. I think the Lord spared us both from a lot of pain by having the relationship end where it did. Church is awkward though. He's been at this church for years, and I will have been there for a year in July. I love this church and the people there to pieces. However, he and his family are very influential and a part of leadership in the church. My ex's dad is an elder. They avoid me, and my ex's friends act awkward around me. I do my best to be friendly and not gossip about the guy. When people ask what happened, I smile and say, it didn't work out. I still have respect for him and believe the Lord is working on him, just like he's working on me. But I hate how awkward this is. I'm trying to be patient and allow time to pass. But is there anything I can do to smooth things out in the future, even if I don't find closure? Gotta respect this girl. Like, shout out to you for ending it when you knew it was time for it to end, because that's already like a big step.
Yeah.
And shout out to you for, trying your best to stay committed to the church. But yeah, what do you think, Prince?
I think it's hard because when it comes to interpersonal relationships and that dynamic, obviously the simple answer and straightforward answer is just leave. If you're not feeling welcome, then you don't have to stay there. And this goes in with the mindset of go where you're celebrated, know where you're tolerated. I don't think church works like that though, because sometimes you would have to navigate some hard friendships and relationships. You can't always walk away when the relationship fails or falls through. And this is not just romantic relationships. This is friendships with people. Sometimes they fall through. Sometimes somebody just ghosts you. That's a good friend in church.
Yeah.
They don't tell you why. They don't explain, and it's awkward. So I think sitting with the awkwardness or knowing that that might take a while is the first part of it. But I would say actually it might be an opportunity to build new friendships. Like, because if you moved around the same circles, one of the hardest things to do might be to continue to try and maybe connect with them, because the awkwardness is still there. Sometimes the awkwardness goes away with time, other times it doesn't. It's just you found a way to not care too much about it. And so I would say it's good to actually give yourself the opportunity to build community with others in the church. Make an intentional effort to do that. But if it doesn't still work out, or if you're suddenly finding that there is a hostility towards you in the church, there is an argument, there's a proper argument to actually walk away and find another church, because I don't think this is the stage to do that. But you want to feel part of the church community when you come to church. It can't be a place where you're isolated. And this doesn't mean whether it's 300 people or 500. You just want to know that you're connected and people care. Once you find that you're out of the clique, everybody else is kind of connected and you're not connected, something is off. That experience is not what the church is meant to provide. So, and I think there's places where to actually be able to speak to someone in church in terms of, I'm not feeling connected. These are the issues. There should be room to have those conversations. But when you've lost community in church, it's only a matter of time. You either going through the motions and you're not really connected, which means you're not really growing as you should, because there's aspects of your work with God that you need people to connect with you on.
Yeah. I completely agree with you on that. I think, go to the pastor. If you're comfortable, go talk to the pastor of the church and just be like, this is my experience. It's very inappropriate for an elder to be icing you out because you broke up with his son. I don't know what, that's beyond childish and very unchristian. So let's call things out for what they are.
Yeah.
This elder is abusing their position in a sense, right? And using their influence to isolate you from people in church. Very inappropriate.
Yeah.
And that is definitely something that you should anonymously or outrightly go talk to the pastor about.
Yeah.
Somebody in leadership and be like, this is what's happening. Yeah. And I know you don't want to gossip, but this is inappropriate behavior. What if the guy dates another person in the future? And same thing, like women should be safe to come to church, regardless of if they end a relationship with somebody or not, right? You know what I mean? Choosing to date somebody isn't a vow to marry. It's an So I think you need to talk to your pastor about it. And you say it's a great church. I'm hoping that number one, the pastor can call this elder and his family to order. And then number two, your pastor can look out for you. He can be like, okay, this is the clique that these people have. These are some other circles in the church. These are some people I can introduce you to. Yeah. These are some small groups that you can join. Yeah. This is a group that you can serve in, where you can join and make it your own. Because I find that people like that usually have their own clique, right? Yeah. There's no way everybody knows everybody in the church. Yeah, of course. So the pastor usually knows the ins and outs of the social circles. I would say talk to the pastor. But then if you talk to the pastor and and you're getting weird vibes too, then it goes back to the thing. I think leadership of a church should have integrity. And so as much as you love this church, you have to question if the elder is behaving this way, elder's son is behaving this way, grown people in the church are behaving this way, plus the pastor is endorsing that behavior, there's something wrong. Right. So that's how I would look at it. I
think that because at the end of the day, we are just be intentional in terms of making sure that you're bringing to light, this is what's going on.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it's important that it doesn't just, like you said, repeat itself.
Yeah.
But I would say again, and this is even as a pastor of a church, I do not think it's good to be in a church where you are literally it's torture going in.
Yeah.
That's not the experience church should give. I just don't think there's anywhere in the world where anyone should be going into church, and it's more of a nightmare scenario. If things can be addressed, they should be addressed.
Yeah.
But when you obviously see we're heading in different directions, and maybe I've shared this and they're not seeing it, your experience with God does not just involve being here. It's your relationship with him, it's serving, it's connecting with people. There has to be room for those things to happen in church. And when it's not happening, it's good to reassess. I don't think people should just, we don't even live in a generation anymore where people follow blindly. Everything is, you ask questions again. So you evaluate, is this really where I'm drawing life and where I'm ministering and God is really working in me? And if it's not, it's good to assess and take a step back.
You know what? And something I want to say is, it's easy to be like the church people. We're the church. If you go to a church and you know that somebody just broke up with somebody and you see that there is a ganging up, please go befriend the girl. Go talk to her at church. Go sit down beside her. Be your brother's keeper. At the end of the day, it's not just up to the leadership of the church, right? This lady in this story, even if there was one regular girl at the church or a regular guy who decided to be their friend, who decided to invite them to small group, I think sometimes that's even more powerful than the pastor trying to intervene in that situation. So as a church, we should look out for people. Breakups are very, very hard. If you know somebody who's going through a breakup with a brother or sister in church, try your best to support them and be there for them. Don't wait for somebody else or the pastor to do it. You can help them through that as well. I know a story of somebody who, and I really respect them because the guy had been talking to this other person and they didn't work out. And then she started dating the guy. And the rule that she had was they couldn't sit together in church or be all lovey-dovey in church for at least 2 months. So that the other girl who is still coming to the church, like, I was just in talking stage with this person 2 weeks ago and now they have a girlfriend. Like, you know what I mean? I don't know what the timeline was, but they deserve to be able to come to church and feel safe. And in order to facilitate that, even though I don't have to, I'm not going to do any public type of thing to make the other girl feel uncomfortable until like a sufficient amount of time has passed. We're not sitting together. We're not holding hands and things like that. That's how to be a girl's girl. That's how to be a sister's keeper in church.
But I think you're right.
We are the church, things like that. Yeah,
we are the ones who we all have roles to play in terms of helping to create an environment that's comfortable and welcoming. So it's not just them, it's us as a church.
Exactly.
So that's a good point.
I think, Chris, are we doing one more, or do we want to call it a day?
No, did you find any other Reddit stories interesting?
I think this one is good, especially because we did some personal stories. I think to close off, I wanted you to talk about your personal story and how you were able to overcome that, and any final words for our listeners.
My personal story of church hurt?
Of church hurt, yeah. I want to hear yours.
I mean,
especially as a pastor too, right?
I mean, there's the one of being ghosted. Let's just put it that way. Good friends with someone who was in church and all of a sudden just didn't hear from him anymore. Radio silence. Radio silence. And so I decided to, try. And the funny thing is, we just went as good friends.
I remember you guys used to go golfing.
We played golf just maybe in the summertime. And it's like, we're starting small groups once again, right? We're back into it. It's like, when will you be joining us for it? It's like, it's quite busy, but just pencil me in for next month. My schedule will clear up a bit. The guy's busy sometimes, so.
And Prince isn't a person of many friends. At any given point in time, you only have a few, right?
Yeah, so I was like, I'm going to tighten things up, checking with him. So I check in with him the next month. I'm not hearing from him. And then others start asking me because we are close. Like there was a circle of 3 of us. We had inside jokes. It was like, it was so fun. Like we'll hang out, we'll chat, we'll spend time in each other's places. Like it was just amazing. So then I started getting people coming to ask me, we're not hearing from this person. You are one of the people in the circle. What's going on? And I'm like, I'll reach out to him. But at one point it became obvious that, so I just came clean. I said, I also am not hearing from him. As you are not hearing from him, so I'm not.
Ain't heard a thing.
We are also all on the outskirts of things. So then people will be like, even you, what did you do? It's like they started blaming me. Like, I didn't fight with him. This sense, like, then how come you've been excluded? So at one point I went to the lead pastor of the church, and then he came to me and said, Prince, this is what's going on. Don't you think we should do something? I said, look, whatever you suggest we do it, because
The
I'm
lead pastor came to you.
the lead pastor came
Yeah.
to me. It's just like I've tried everything. It's like, you know what? Let's surprise him. Let's drive down to his place.
And it's people far.
Yeah, I won't mention the location
Yeah, it was like an
because
hour
can
away.
make the
Yeah.
connection. So
Yeah.
we drove down just over an hour. This is on a weekday.
Yeah.
It's like I had to walk in
First
the
of all,
morning and everything.
what a great friend.
So
I'm
like,
showing up at my
We're
friend's
going with
house.
the cars, like we park, and I don't know. The lead pastor is also is amazing, but I was like, let's park far away so that we don't spook anyone. So I was thinking, why would we have to park far away? Let's just park. He said, no,
This is
no.
my bestie.
Let's park far away. So we park, and then it was like we see his car is parked in. So we are knocking on the doors, like, hey, we're here. We're knocking. We're obviously excited. He's not responding. No. So I think that maybe he's upset. Maybe we need to press the doorbell, right? The one that generates the sound. Through the building, right? So we're pressing it. No. But then we see there's a light in one part of the building. Like the light is on in one of the rooms.
Oh.
So, but then we don't know if it was left on for a while. So we were there for almost an hour, probably an hour 15.
And it wasn't a warm day, if I remember. It was a little.
Yeah, it was cold.
It was a cold day. Yeah.
We didn't hear from him. He didn't respond. He didn't open the door. Yeah, that's.
And there's a good chance he was home.
There's a good chance he was home. Like
Yeah.
I don't want to say 100%, but
Yeah.
the car was there. There's a good chance he was home now. But maybe he went out with someone else. So I can't say 100% because I didn't see him. But
Yeah.
the light was on. It was really bad. The drive back was just very awkward because the person and I were trying to, you know how you're creating scenarios, what could have happened? Maybe it was out.
You're the bestie.
Maybe he
Why
took a
don't
run.
you know?
He likes to take a run sometimes. And then he was like, what really happened? I'm like, no, not again. No one should ask me what really happened again. I can't take anyone that see what happened. So I was ghosted and it was painful. And I did go through a period where I asked myself, did I do something wrong? Was he going through something in his life and I was not paying enough attention? Because we'll chat and we'll talk about everything.
Yeah. You guys were close.
Like when I started dating you, one of the friends these are the guys I sat down with and said, guys, I have news. This is what's going on. So that's how close we were. So, and then the funny thing is the other friend who was part of the three
musketeers.
I talked to him. I was like, this is what I was like, Prince, don't worry about it. He's just going through it. So I was like, you're in touch with him? He said, yes. I said, can we figure this thing out? Because maybe I did something wrong. He said, you don't worry. I've talked to him. You just give him some time. So at one point, I became upset with the other friend too because he did not seem to be taking it seriously.
Yeah.
Because he was still in the circle.
Yeah.
Then 1 month later, I called him. I said, Prince,
He chopped the breakfast.
I've not heard from this guy. I said, oh, you've not? I said, welcome
No
home, my
kidding.
brother. I welcome you in the name of the Lord. I said, I was warning you before for us to take this seriously. He said, no. Look at where we are now. I said, there's nothing I can tell you. Just come to terms with it.
Sorry, I have to do this. Everybody still eats that breakfast.
I've been there. You will now be there. And they come and talk to me after. So, and after a month, they called me again. It was like, it's getting worse. I don't even know what I'm concerned. I'm like, look, everything you're running through now, all these emotions, I've been there and back. I've questioned my integrity. I've questioned the genuineness of my friendship. Did I really care? Was the conversations we had always about me and not about him? Did I ask what's going on in his family? Did I miss the signs or something? I asked a lot of questions.
Yeah.
And I even questioned, what kind of pastor am I? That this guy. So there were lots of questions. And I genuinely had to find a way to make peace with the fact that this can happen.
Yeah.
But just I'll go with that story because I could share, even as a pastor, in terms of transitioning from my previous church to my current. They are just experiences that I had that were not really great.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, because that's one that, at the end of the day, you experience that and it's like, we're broken people. And sometimes when it comes to adapting to change and accepting that change is happening, everybody's stomachs or deals with it differently. But I think by and large, those are one-off comments or things that happened. I won't go into the details of that. But this one that I just shared is one of the two today. When I remember, there's still a part of me that
I really thought this person was like going to be a groomsman at our wedding. Like this, I thought this was like a forever
for
person.
sure.
Yeah.
So today, it blows my mind.
So I have to make this comment. I just find it very funny when you're part of a group and one person does something to somebody and the other people in the group don't take any ownership for it because they haven't done it to them.
Yeah.
And then a month, a year, 2 years later, they're like, this person did this to me. I'm like, and I'm so hurt. I'm like, what? No kidding.
Yeah.
When it happened to me, you were like, oh, it happens.
Yeah.
Did you think you were immune to this? Like, sorry, I just.
And I think
It's very hard.
you know what, and this is probably, since we just as we wrap up, it is wise to not make conclusions when friendships break up, and this is
Yeah.
never relationship.
Yeah.
Don't make conclusions about what one person did or did
Yeah.
not do, because if you do not know the full story of it, because the people that kept on asking me, what did you do? I felt
That's
I went from
terrible.
feeling really surprised to just downright upset.
Yeah.
I'm like, do you think I've not asked myself that question? I don't know. And then if something happens, and in the last few years, I've been in touch with this person, not via like calls
Yeah.
or like face-to-face meetups, just text messages
On and off. Yeah.
on like, how are you doing? I hope you're good. Yeah, things are well, nothing serious. But it still hurts because it's like, I just don't know why. I don't know what happened. And I think you're already dealing with that. You don't need someone else making weird statements
Yeah.
like, did you do something? Can
Yeah.
you share? Did you say something to him that
I'm just
like,
looking for tea.
what do you think happened here? That
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
but no, to your point, I think you make a good point in that, because it's at the end of the day, these things are hard, and sometimes when it hasn't happened to the other persons, they're like, yeah,
Yeah.
just be intentional. Because if
Yeah,
someone
we
says
all
this
need
happened to me, before you dismiss as well, it hasn't happened to me, I'm good. It's a go round situation. They can
Yeah.
come just close to you when you don't least
Yeah,
expect it.
and I think that it goes back to where the church, if somebody behaves badly towards another person, because they haven't done it to you doesn't mean you can't call out that behavior.
Yes.
And you can't discourage that behavior.
Yeah.
I think it's all of us should take ownership for it. Things shouldn't only become painful when it's your personal experience. I
Yeah.
think there's a place for accountability and calling each other to order, right?
Yeah.
Like that friend of yours, like if I'm not trying to blame him, but they could have been more of a mediator in that situation, right? And hopefully, but I can't blame them either because
Yeah,
they also
and-
got ghosted.
And there's some
So-
people who actually try too.
Yeah,
to kind of
yeah,
connect with
yeah.
it. Just then,
Yeah, it's just don't.
Yeah.
If you're in a group and something happens between two people, don't just like absolve yourself of it.
Yeah.
Like sometimes there's a place for intervening.
playing a role.
Yeah, but I really had fun in recording this today.
Yeah, this was really good.
Yeah, I had fun recording today.
This will be part of what we're calling our church series, Matters Around the Church.
Yeah.
So this is the first part, which we would definitely, it was a long one. So
It was a long one. Probably this is the second episode, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, this
so
is the second
definitely.
episode
So
from one. So
we-
thank you for,
tune into the part one.
yeah, and part two.
So-
You guys are the
so-
real ones
so-
listening to this. I mean, we're giving there's some juicy bits in here as well, but learn from us. Don't just take the juice. Yeah, but learn from us. I think how I will end this is, church is filled with human beings. We're very broken. Doesn't make unacceptable behavior acceptable.
Yeah.
Bad behavior is still bad behavior.
Yes.
But don't be like me. Don't assume that a certain group of people are holier than the others. We're all very broken. And there's always a place for forgiveness. There's a place for walking away. There's a place for taking a break. Different approaches to different experiences. Just always lean on God. Pray to Him. Let Him be the one to guide you. And lean on godly counsel. And that's why it's very important, no matter what church you're in, to have your core group of friends. 1, 2, whatever that is, people that you can always run back to support you as you pursue community in church. But yeah, thank you so much for listening. We're looking forward to seeing you at the next episode.
All right.
Hoping that you have a blessed weekend, week, whatever it is that you're listening to this. Thank you, everyone, and bye.
Bye. And we'll see you on the next episode.
Bye.
Bye.